Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker, and you are listening to episode 161 of the podcast, or you're joining us live here on YouTube. If you guys want to catch the show live, just subscribe to MMA on the Rocks on YouTube. Set your notifications so you know when we're going live. It's always going to be sometime every Sunday. Speaking of which, today is Sunday, October 13th, episode 161, and we're coming off of UFC Fight Night 161 from the Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. I was there live last night. Those of you who follow along on social media saw everything I was posting from the arena. It was a great time, awesome fight card. But before we get into that, let me introduce my co-host all the way from New Jersey, which is starting to frost over a little bit, Jeff, the Animal Wilson. Jeff, how's the soup coming along, kid?
Bill, it's coming. It's usually an all-day thing, but Bill, I love it, man. It's the perfect food for this weather that we're having. It's fall. It's finally starting to get chilly. People don't look at me funny for wearing shorts and a hoodie. So leave me alone. I want to wear what I want because my chest is cold, but my legs aren't, Bill.
Calm down, Jeff. We're only a minute and a half into this thing. You don't need to come at the listeners like that. I don't know if we're going to make some more friends or some more enemies today, Jeff, because I got some opinions about the fights last night. I was there live, and I saw things a little bit differently than other people seem to on social media and things like that. I know there's a big difference when you're there live and watching it live, which makes you empathize judging a little bit more. You know, it's easy to jump on the judges, but when you're there and you're feeling the environment and the crowd and everything like that, you can't help but be influenced by it. And conversely, when you're watching it at home, from the comfort of your own couch, it's a little easier to pass judgment. And then you're hearing the commentary, which influences you as well. I always try to not listen to the commentary. But at the same time, I try to look up to the guys who are doing that stuff because I am in the broadcasting realm. All that being said, I'm building up to something that's a little bit uncomfortable for me to talk about because a teammate of mine fought on this card. I interviewed him last week. Matt the Steamroller Frevola fought Luis Peña in one of the best cards of the night, if not one of the best fights of the night, if not of the year. I thought this fight was so back and forth and everything like that. For those of you who missed it, there was a bonus episode this week. I went to Gracie, Tampa South to interview Matt Steamroller Frevola. It was a great interview leading up to this fight at Fight Night 161. He really gave a lot of great background, and I had a lot of insight into his camp leading up to this fight as well. I saw a lot of sparring. I saw a lot of inside things. All that being said, I always do my best to give the most objective opinion possible. So I'm going to continue to do that for you all. So I was sitting there watching the fight. And of course, this is someone I know personally. And full disclosure, I happen to be a fan of the way Luis Peña fights as well. Obviously, I like Matt Frevola. I know him personally. I know what kind of heart and determination, hard work he puts into these fight camps. I do not know Luis Peña personally, but at the same time, I enjoy watching his fights. So all that being said, let's get to the actual fight itself. And I want to lead with this just because a lot of you probably heard the interview that I did with Matt Frevola last week. So we'll get to the main event and everything like that, of course. So I was watching this fight, and at the end of it, I was like, oh shit, I don't know what to think. My heart was kind of pounding. I thought it was an awesome fight for both guys. I thought both guys had moments where they looked absolutely phenomenal. Luis had some really slick submissions off of his back. Matt's wrestling looked phenomenal. Luis had that flying knee in the second round. He busted Matt's face up. Matt had that lead hook that he was landing basically at will. They both had a lot of positives that they can and should take away from this fight. After the first round, I thought that Matt dominated the first round, but in the last 40 to 45 seconds, it looked like Luis was getting the better of him because of a kind of can opener variation choke that he was hitting from the bottom side control, where he was trapping Matt's head and arm, with his leg and kind of figure fouring his own legs. It's hard to describe unless you've actually done jiu-jitsu before, which is why if you're a judge watching this and you don't really know what's happening, you're just seeing Matt Frevola on top, and then you see him get out, and you don't know that anything else has happened. It just looks like he's a little bit tired at the end of the round, and he takes some shots up against the cage and almost gets taken down, but I wouldn't really consider it a takedown. So he hits the 2 big takedowns on Peña in the first round. He kind of gets taken down at the end of the round and takes some shots up against the cage, probably because he was so lightheaded from the choke. I've been in this choke before. It is very uncomfortable. It can cause you to pass out unconscious. It's not the type of choke that I would expect someone like Matt Frevola to tap out to, or any high-level jiu-jitsu competitor for that matter. If you're in a jiu-jitsu competition and you get put in this, you're probably going to either, wait for the guy's leg to cramp up, which is a possibility. And this is a long-limbed grappler's move, by the way, as well. So if you have a short, stocky build like myself or like Jeff the Animal Wilson, do not attempt this move at your local gym.
Noted.
So he was probably lightheaded, and it just looked like he was tired. But if you know jiu-jitsu, then he was probably waiting for the blood to come back into his brain so he could wake up a little bit. And if you know Matt Frevola, he was not tired. And that was evident in the second and third rounds. The second round was a clear victory for Peña, I thought, and even Matt admitted that. And the third round, Matt Frevola won. It all came down to how you viewed that first round. And a lot of times people and judges alike, well, judges are people, most of them anyway, have something called a recency effect. So the last thing you see has the biggest impact on you. So if you see Matt Frevola taking shots up against the cage and almost getting taken down at the end of the round, you forget that he was dominating the first 4 minutes and 15 seconds or so of this round. I had to go back and rewatch it today. With the commentary and everything else to come to that realization, because when I was watching it live, everything seems kind of sped up. And when the decision was about to be announced, I was like, shit, I don't know if the judges, saw that first round for Peña because of what happened at the end. There's a good chance he could walk away with it. And it was a split decision. One judge did see it that way. And I did see the judges' scorecards. It did come down to that first round. And 2 of the judges gave it a 10-9 for Frevola, which is the right call. And one of the judges gave it to Peña. Now, Peña, of course, was super salty at the end of this fight, stormed out of the cage, didn't want to shake hands or anything like that. And, went on a little social media tirade. He was emotional. I think he had a lot of personal things going on in his life leading up to this fight. And it's definitely an emotional time. So, all that is completely understandable. But I think the judges got this one right. And I really don't want to be biased when I say that. So hopefully I've given enough evidence. Jeff, you were watching this at home. What were your thoughts when this went down? And what are your thoughts on the decision here?
Yeah, so my thing was kind of what you touched base on was whether or not the judges factored in everything that happened in the rounds or if they just remember the last things of the rounds. And in particular, round 1, it finished with Luis Peña on top. He was getting a couple shots in off a nice sweep from the bottom. But at the end of the second round, we had again, Peña had Frevola up against the cage. There was that massive knee that you could see. Just he clocked Frevola, man, for lack of a better term. And and to me, Frevola's taking some deep breaths in between the in between the second and third rounds. But in that third round, he came out swinging. He came out throwing heavy leather, putting pressure on Peña. And I'll be honest with you, Bill, I thought that it could have gone either way, but I thought that Frevola had done enough to win the fight, so I was really hoping he won. And then, they called, excuse me, they made the call, and Frevola's hand got raised. So I was really excited. This was a really exciting fight, man. And, not just because Matt Frevola is a friend of the show, but for me, Bill, this was fight of the night because like I said, I could have seen it going for Peña. I felt like in the third round, Frevola had to make a comeback. I felt like it was way too close. He needed to do something definitive, to win that fight in the third round. And I think he did. I think he dominated the third round. The first round, I believe that Frevola took some hard shots and got dropped at one point. He landed on his butt. But, if I was also thinking if the judges take that into account, I don't know if they'll give it to Frevola because of those little things that happened in between, Frevola's wrestling and everything. But great fight, and I'm glad that the decision went the way it did.
Yeah, so am I. Big congratulations and a big shout out to the steamroller, Matt Frevola. I know how much hard work he's put into this fight camp and leading up to this, so some well-deserved time off. And in all honesty, even though he just fought a teammate and a friend of the show, I'm looking forward to Luis Peña's next fight, man. I think maybe that saltiness put a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and we're gonna see a violent Bob Ross set on fire in his next performance. We could dive really deep into this fight and break it down move by move. I was really impressed with the Kimura trap system that Bob Ross was using to defend against the takedowns, but Frevola rolled right through all of them and wound up on top in every one of those scrambles, even though that was a lot of pressure on the shoulder. Kimura is a nasty shoulder lock, and it didn't stop him from going for the takedowns either. So even getting put in those nasty situations didn't make him hesitate at all, and that's why he's a warrior. So credit to both of these lightweights for putting on a fucking show for the Tampa crowd. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing both of them fight again, even if it's both of them fighting each other. If people think it was really that close, which it was definitely a close fight, then maybe let's run it back. They didn't get that fight of the night bonus. Unfortunately, it would have gotten my vote as well. But again, that may be some of my bias speaking there. The fight of the night did go to Cub Swanson and Cron Gracie in the co-main event. But before we get to that, I want to talk about these women strawweights who really put on a show as well. And I kind of thought watching this fight live that maybe this one would have won fight of the night. And then I was really surprised to see how people said it was such a blowout for Joanna. I definitely think she won 4 out of 5 rounds, but I feel like every round was kind of close. Michelle had her spots where she was looking good. She got Joanna's back a couple of times, and Joanna tried to play it off like it was no big deal. But, being there live and experiencing this, people were definitely reacting a lot bigger to what Michelle was doing than to what Joanna was doing. And credit to Joanna Jedrzejczyk, because I noticed somewhere in the 4th round that her foot was definitely broken. And she said she broke it towards the end of the 2nd round, going into the 3rd. And she was moving on it just fine. She was limping back to her corner a little bit, but for someone who had a broken foot, she was still throwing it right at Michelle Waterson. She was proving to everybody who was doubting her, that she can still make this strawweight weight limit, and also showing that she still has, some championship moves left in her. I think a lot of people were kind of writing her off after her last couple of fights, but I think they were just matchups that were stylistically bad for her. And, she's right back in the mix because the person who beat her for the title is kind of out of the running right now. And we got a new champ, and the landscape's looking completely different at strawweight. Give me your thoughts on this main event, Jeff.
Bill, I have a little bit of a different opinion. I think that the reason the crowd was reacting to what Michelle Waterson was doing was because it wasn't happening very often. Joanna Jedrzejczyk, man, especially early on, she was piecing Michelle Waterson up. There were a lot of leg kicks, which, Bill, I'm a fan of leg kicks. I think that they are a long-term investment, and that's the type of fight that Joanna fights, is a 5-round fight. She's not going to try and knock you out. She's gonna overload you with her pace and her output. And those leg kicks, they start paying off in those later rounds when your opponent starts to shoot in on you a little less and is not wanting to fight out with their lead leg, so they switch stances. All that stuff, I feel like it's so intricate, and that's what I love about leg kicks. And yeah, dude, I noticed Joanna's foot too. It was swelled up. I think I noticed it between rounds 3 and 4. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember. But yeah, it swelled up, and they had ice on it. As soon as the ice came off, it was just this mass. So I assumed it was broken. Same deal, dude. Credit to Joanna Jedrzejczyk, still being able to keep that pace going for 5 rounds. And Bill, I think what impressed me the most, Michelle Waterson was very impressive. She was never out of the fight, but there were even in rounds, I think it was 4 and 5, that when she took the back, she was attacking, she was going for the rear naked choke, but I was impressed with Joanna's physical strength. I don't think Michelle Waterson thought that Joanna Jedrzejczyk would be as strong as she was, because Jedrzejczyk was able to press Waterson up against the cage, even went to take Waterson down, was on top of her for a little bit, Bill, and just able to reverse positions whenever they clinched up. It was Joanna getting the better of the clinches, and I think that aspect was something that Waterson wasn't prepared for. That's obviously something that you can't put on a list of statistics. So, definitely just such an interesting fight, man. I definitely want to go back and watch this one, even though I already saw it. It was just such a good fight from both ends. Waterson was never out of that fight, and she was upset at the end when they interviewed her. I think she had nothing to be upset about. I don't think her stock goes down at all.
Yeah.
She's a warrior. She was never out of that fight.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's more what I mean, that it was, I don't mean that it was close, but I mean that, Michelle Waterson had her spots, but I don't ever feel like she was in danger of getting finished at any point. She was definitely getting outpointed by the former champ. And, she looked good. She put up more of a fight than it seemed like. When I was seeing the reaction on social media, people were like, well, Joanna blew her out of the water. I didn't see it that way. I saw it as she was in there the whole time, and she had her spots where she looked good. She kept it competitive. I didn't see it as like a total one-sided blowout, like I did Thomas Gifford and Mike Davis, which we'll get to a little bit later on. Let's get into the co-main event here, Jeff, which I just saw some disturbing commentary that Cron Gracie thought he won this fight. And that's really unsettling. I hope it's not true that he said that, because I thought he handled the loss really well. He shook hands with Cub. He left the octagon. He shook hands with every single person on the way out. He took pictures with people. I thought he looked really humble in defeat there. So I hope it's not true that he said those things. But Cub Swanson, after the first round, I could argue that maybe Cron won that first round just because Cub was really tentative and backing up a lot. And then when he realized that Cron wasn't going for a takedown, and he had a metronome-like approach to his striking where he was coming in like somebody just learning like square dancing or something, where he was almost like counting his steps in his head, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then once Cub picked up on that rhythm and realized that it was staying consistent, Cub just started piecing him up for the whole rest of the fight. And a couple of times Cron tried to pull guard, didn't really attempt a takedown. Cub just kind of shrugged him off. There was one time where he got inside his guard. He tried to pass Cron's guard immediately, which is a bold move. And then when he realized that was a waste of time, he just got back up and started piecing him up again. I thought it was great boxing display by Cub Swanson. I thought it was a great strategy. He even started letting some kicks go towards the end of the second and third rounds. So he was very aware of the timing in there. And I think it just showed his overall MMA experience advantage over Cron Gracie here. And I think Kron was maybe rushed into a co-main event against, a top competition, especially someone as experienced as Cub Swanson, whom the UFC was probably expecting to get submitted in the first round. But, Kron didn't even really resort to his jiu-jitsu, which we know is top shelf, top in the world. But one thing I know about Gracie's from knowing some of them personally and having had interactions with them and watching them fight since 1993, they're stubborn, Jeff. They just are. So if Kron has it in his head that he's going to go in there and outstrike Cub Swanson, then he's going to stick to that game plan and run it into the ground, whether it's working or not. And he's not going to lean on the amazing tools he has in his toolbox. Even if it means losing the fight, he's going to stick to what he went in there to do. And that's basically what happened, in my opinion. Give me your thoughts on this co-main event, Jeff.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with you on that. And I think that Cub Swanson fought such a great fight, man. He was so cerebral about his approach. And like you said, man, Cron Gracie was getting lit up like a Christmas tree, dude. His face was, making a great mitt for Cub Swanson's hands. And dude, I think he might have some brain damage if he thinks he won this fight, man, because he didn't, like you said, man, he was kind of like, Bill, did you ever play those, what are those things called? Those robots that like, they stand still and if you like push a button, they'll like throw a punch like that. Did you ever see those when you were a kid?
Oh, like the Rock'em Sock'em
robots?
Yeah,
that's what they're called, the Rock'em Sock'em robots. That was Cron Gracie. He would like turn. Oh, and also he was super flat-footed, dude. Oh my God, I couldn't stand it. But yeah, he was really flat-footed in that first round. Cub Swanson was dancing around him, and I loved what Cub Swanson was doing. He was tearing at Cron Gracie's body, man. At the end of that second round, Bill, I don't know if you noticed this, but Cron Gracie was taking massive breaths as he was walking back to his corner. And it was kind of like when Stipe beat Daniel Cormier in that third or fourth round, where he was just the same spot right by the triangle of right by the diaphragm. Every single uppercut or hook was just hitting Cron Gracie in the same spot, and it was affecting him. It was slowing down, and I was actually impressed with Cub Swanson on the ground too. When he was trying to pass the guard, he did this thing that I like to do myself. Is before Cron Gracie had a chance to close up his guard, Cub Swanson lifted his leg so that his knee would be there so that Cron Gracie couldn't completely close the guard around him. And it almost worked out for him. But I think he just realized that Cub Swanson, I think he just realized that he was having more success beating this dude up on the feet. So really, really good fight from both of these guys. And I think you're right. I think Cron Gracie, it was a little too soon to throw him into the frying pan here.
Yeah, and I think that's probably his own doing, because I've heard interviews with him and he said he's only looking for, to test himself against top competition. So you can't fault him for that. He did it, and he did not succeed, unless you count all the punches that he blocked with his face, which was a lot. I want to move on for the sake of time, because we're about 25 minutes in. We only covered 3 fights here. So I want to get to Nico Price welcoming James Vick to the welterweight division with a nasty upkick. This is probably the worst upkick knockout I've ever seen. Nico Price knocks out his second opponent in the UFC from the bottom, which is just fucking absurd if you think about it. This guy is dangerous from everywhere. You cannot take a break on this guy no matter where you are. If you take him down, you are still in trouble. If you drop him and you get on top, you are still in trouble. This is a dangerous man because he's very unorthodox. He throws strikes from weird angles. I watched the replay several times. They kept showing it in the arena, and man, I could not figure out how he got the angle on this heel across James Vick's jaw. It was phenomenal. And of course, the place was going crazy because Niko Price from Cape Coral, Florida, about 2 hours south of Tampa. So he had a big cheering section that was right near the cage, and I was sitting pretty close to them. So there was a lot of energy for Niko in the arena. Give me your reaction to this fight, Jeff.
Dude, Bill, you were there live, so maybe you didn't hear this, but go back and watch the video because the sound of Niko Price's heel going into James Vick's jaw is fucking sickening. Bill, it was just a loud click. Like, oh my God, it was horrifying. You need to go back and watch this video, Bill, because I don't think the mics were. I don't think you could have heard it with all the noise of the arena, but the mics picked it up. And my first assumption was, I think he just shattered James Vick's jaw. It was, oh man, but dude, I don't even know. His hips were not in this equation, Bill. So I don't know where he generated the power for this. I guess when he was swinging his leg back, maybe. But man, what do you say about Niko Price, man? This guy has no fear, Bill. What do you do to a man who has no fear? I don't know.
You gotta either put his lights out or otherwise. I would put him in a category with like a Justin Gaethje, where this guy is going to keep fighting even when he's unconscious. He's just one of those dudes, man, who like you said, he's fearless and he's super unorthodox and he's dangerous from everywhere. He's a problem in this welterweight division. As for James Vick, he had a bunch of bad knockouts, probably too many at lightweight before deciding to move up to welterweight. I was campaigning personally for him to move up to welterweight before he even fought Justin Gaethje, who buttered up his chin a little bit, and then Dan Hooker as well. And then he made that move, and man, now he's probably got a broken jaw. You got to feel bad for the guy just for the pain that he went through last night and that he's probably in today. I know a lot of people are not fans of James Vick because of his affiliation with his coach, Lloyd Irvin, who, if you guys don't know the backstory on that, I'm just going to tell you to go ahead and Google it. And so James Vick's coach, Lloyd Irvin, was involved in, some not so moral things. And, go ahead and look into that on your own and come to your own conclusion on that. So because Vick kind of stood up for his coach and, sympathized with his actions a little bit, which is, very sketchy. A lot of people dislike him within the MMA community, understandably so, if you know the backstory there. But man, he just got his jaw cracked in half by somebody's heel. So, as a human being, you got to have at least a little sympathy there. But I didn't even check today to see how he was doing. So you can kind of gauge where I stand on the whole situation. Moving on, Mackenzie Dern, man, the first time she made weight in the UFC comes 4 months after giving birth to her child, which is an accomplishment in and of itself. You have to credit this woman for stepping in there. I thought Michelle Waterson was superhuman, getting in there and fighting 10 months after having her first child, 4 months after giving birth. Jeff, 4 months after my kid was born, I didn't want to get off my couch, and I wasn't even the one that had the baby. Yeah. I didn't bear that child for 9 months. I didn't go through labor. I was just kind of there, like going out at midnight and buying snacks. Like that was not a big deal for me. I was not ready for any kind of competition 4 months after that happened. So credit to Mackenzie Dern for getting in there, but man, she needs to work on that striking. It's when she was shadow boxing, like walking to the cage, I was like, oh man, somebody tell her to stop. It's I say this with all due respect because I credit her for even getting in there and going the distance with a savage like Amanda Ribas, who is definitely deserving of the win here. And you know, she even had some ground exchanges with Mackenzie Dern, which is not where you want to be with a world champion Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. But man, yeah, let's tighten up the boxing, or let's change the game plan and get the fight to the ground, where she has a distinct advantage over most people. I shudder to think what would happen if she got in there with like Joanna or Michelle Waterson or Rose at this point. I feel like the girls she's been in there with so far have just been so tentative because of the ground game that they haven't really engaged and taken advantage of her kind of rudimentary striking. But yeah, again, I can't stress enough, 4 months after having a kid and getting in a cage in your underpants is quite an accomplishment. Give me your thoughts, Jeff.
Yeah, Bill, you know how I feel about moms, Bill. I have nothing but respect for them. I think it's the toughest job in the world, and you don't even get paid for it. So there's that, man. And then after the process of pushing a human being out of her body, which sounds very painful,
Mm-hmm.
after 4 months, she gets into a cage to fight somebody. Bill, I have nothing but respect for Mackenzie Dern.
Mm-hmm.
And she made weight.
Yeah.
So respect on that too. And dude, credit to her, but you're right, Bill. She needs to work on the boxing. And for the love of God, I wish she would just put her chin down after the exchanges. Her chin, she was looking at the lights after the exchanges, Bill. That's how up in the air her chin was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think Mackenzie Dern loses stock. I see she's still really, really young in this game of MMA and UFC. So, sky's the limit for her right now. She has time to work on all that stuff.
Yeah, especially coming off a loss, which I think is actually good for her because now she can, take a lower profile fight, maybe a prelim fight, take maybe 9 or 10 months and just work on striking and closing the distance for some takedowns. And yeah, she'll definitely be in good shape. She's still young, and I would personally like to see her at 125 as well. I think she can compete there. Maybe not with the champ, but below Valentina, there's not a whole lot going on at 125. So I think she could have a more comfortable cut there, and I think she would do well. All right, we're gonna take a quick intermission to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Few Distillers. Now, they're not a sponsor of the show, but they're bringing some of these opinions out of me because this is what I'm drinking right now. Few bourbon whiskey. It's a bourbon that's on the lighter side. Believe it or not, it comes out of Chicago. And I've talked about this on the show before. I may have introduced you to it, Jeff, at some point. It's similar to Blanton's in taste. It's a lighter bourbon. It's kind of sweet, easy drinking because it's kind of hot out today. So it's a nice sipper for me today. I discovered this bourbon when I was up in Chicago during the time that Conor McGregor was fighting Floyd Mayweather. I was up there for a work thing, like a conference, and I saw at the hotel I was staying at, they had a Chicago bourbon on the menu, and it was kind of pricey, and I was like, all right, I got to try it. So I got myself a little sifter, and I brought it back up to my hotel room to watch Conor and Floyd, and I was like, man, this is really fucking good. I got to find it. So I found it back here in Florida, like Total Wine or something, and it was pretty pricey for a bottle, and then I went through it pretty quick, and I recently found it at an ABC liquor store for much cheaper, and it was on sale. It was like $35 for the bottle. Normally it's like closer to 50. So if you find a bottle of this stuff for under $40, definitely snatch one up and add it to your collection if you're a bourbon drinker. Good stuff. 93 proof. So it's making the opinions flow out of me today, Jeff, even though I'm a little on the exhausted side, as I was telling you, because I was at the fight night in Tampa last night. I didn't even get to go to any after parties or anything. I went home, but still didn't get to bed till about 2 a.m. I was up a little before 6 with the kid, and then I had some errands to run today. Didn't get home until just before we started recording. So, not that I'm looking for any sympathy, but if I seem a little lackluster out there, you guys will understand, especially if you have kids. Let's get back into this card. Another split decision. Eryk Anders and Gerald Meerschaert. I know you and I saw this one a little bit differently, Jeff. And this is another one where I really want to try not to let my bias get in the way, because I do know Gerald and
well, yeah, he's your dad.
Yeah.
As seen in the pictures. Bill, you look like a middle schooler next to this guy.
I know.
He's enormous.
He's built at only 6'1", and I felt like a child standing next to him. For those of you who didn't see it, go check out the MMA on the Rock social media, Twitter, I think it was. I put the picture of me standing next to him, even though it was not very flattering for myself. And then I juxtaposed it with a picture of Super Mario eating the mushroom. We're both bearded white guys, so he looks like a taller, more handsome version of myself. In any case, Jeff, I saw Eryk Anders kind of gassing after the first round. In the second and third, he got dropped a couple of times. I thought the strategy from Meerschaert was a little unusual, because he was trying to straight box with Anders, which is probably where Anders has the advantage. He wasn't throwing a whole lot of body kicks and leg kicks, even though when he was having success with them. And he wasn't really going for the takedowns. Maybe he didn't want to waste his energy because he knows Anders has great takedown defense and he's super athletic. So even though I questioned the strategy, I gave 2 and 3 to Meerschaert. I did not go back and rewatch this one. But at the end of this, I was kind of feeling like it was super close. But Meerschaert should have gotten the nod. I know you saw it differently, Jeff. Give me your thoughts here.
Yeah, I felt that it actually went for Anders, but same deal. I was in the same boat. Honestly, this one was tight. It could have gone either way, but I felt that Anders was doing more to control the cage. I felt like he was producing a little bit more output, moving forward a little bit more. So all those things factored in. I just felt like Eryk Anders did enough to win. I definitely gave the first round to him. The second round definitely for Meerschaert, and then that third round was a little bit of a toss-up. But I felt like Anders started off a little bit better in that round and was fighting better for more time in that round, if that makes sense. And then towards the end, Meerschaert kind of regained control a little bit. But I just felt like Anders did enough to kind of grind out a win here.
Yeah, I did notice somewhere in that third round that Anders started to pick up on the fact that Meerschaert was overextending on that left straight, and he was starting to time it a little bit, and he was landing some good shots off of that. I don't think he picked up on it enough to like really capitalize on it, because if he had, he definitely has the power to knock out anybody at middleweight, especially since moving back down from light heavyweight. Ryan Spann looked amazing against Devin Clark with a really nice guillotine in the second round there. Thoughts on Superman's performance there, Jeff?
Yeah, I thought that Ryan Spann's fight was crazy, dude. He actually looked a whole weight class bigger than Devin Clark here, but then I saw Devin Clark's thighs, and they're bigger than your head, Bill. They're massive. Honestly, you could probably feed 3 people with just one of his thighs.
That's a little dark, but
I'm just saying, he's got really big thighs.
We went from bourbon to cannibalism here. But all right, I'm on board with it.
But anyway, I would have liked to see him just throw some leg kicks, man. He probably could have gotten a lot of power behind him, but Ryan Spann was just very aggressive with his style. You could see Devin Clark was wearing down. He was breaking. And in that second round, In the first round, he went for the guillotine too, but it was off Devin Clark, shooting in on him. In the second round, Ryan Spann was beating him up against the cage, and he looked for the guillotine. So you knew, man, he just broke Devin Clark in that fight. Definitely a really, really fun fight. Very, very aggressive, very oppressive style from Ryan Spann. I dig it, Bill.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. Fun fight for sure. I tell you who didn't have fun last night. That's Thomas Gifford against Mike Davis, who got the knockout victory with 15 seconds left of the third round. Man, this was rough to watch, Jeff, because the first and second round, Gifford took a beating. And at first when he got dropped, like he had some like slick guard recovery techniques from the bottom. And like it looks like he has some good jiu-jitsu. These are two guys who are both 0-1 in the UFC going at it. And Mike Davis took this fight on 4 days' notice, moved up a weight class. I was there for live also for his UFC debut in Fort Lauderdale. He was submitted by Gilbert Burns. So he, so much credit to Mike Davis. 4 days' notice, moves up a weight class, and then beats the fuck out of this kid. I mean, it was a battering for 2 straight rounds. And I don't know how Thomas Gifford's corner let him get off the stool in that third round. And after they did, I don't know how the referee, Andrew Glenn, didn't stop this at some point. I think it was that all parties involved really did a disservice to Thomas Gifford. I don't think he should have been face planted like he was. I think a TKO is fine, or throwing in the towel is fine. I think tapping out to strikes is fine. I'm a big fan of this sport. I'm a big fan of knockouts, but when they're just unnecessary like that, that's not something I enjoy watching. When you're seeing a guy who clearly has no fight left in him, who doesn't have much means to defend himself, that's not entertaining for me. I don't like to see that. I would like to see the referee kind of step in and keep the guy safe in there and make a call. And I know it's a tough call. And I know it's a tough call for the corner, but you got to let your fighter live to fight another day. And luckily, Thomas Gifford is feeling okay today. His CTE scan came back with pretty good results. But, why would you want to wait to find that out? When you clearly were down in this fight, especially after that second round. Give me your thoughts, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, Bill. I think that, as a referee, it's your job to protect the fighters. And as a cornerman, that's part of the job description too, man. And I think that would Gifford have been pissed off at his corner if they threw in the towel? Absolutely, yes, because he's a warrior. And I think that everybody who does this is a warrior. But you know what, Bill? I think that the cornerman needs to be like, listen, you don't have to like me right now, but you're not taking any more damage. It's enough. I think we're just going to call it. You'll get over it, but permanent damage, that's going to stay with you. So I think the corner, I think they dropped the ball here.
Yeah, and it was vicious. And I don't want to take away from Mike Davis's performance, which was flawless, especially coming off the bench on 4 days' notice. Local guy, trains in Florida. He was available. This fight got bumped off the main card. I forget who Gifford was even supposed to fight at this point, because so much has happened between then and now. But Mike Davis, man, this is another lesson in always be ready. I was talking about my teammate Dan Martinez a couple of weeks ago, who stepped up and got an opportunity to go to ADCC on like 2 days' notice. And he was prepared, and he got in there and did his thing. And he didn't get the result he wanted, but he got in there and did it. He took advantage of an opportunity, and that's what Mike Davis did. So credit to him for taking advantage of that. And it can't feel good, like just beating on a defenseless carcass, basically. Like it was pretty bad. Like Gifford took almost as bad of a beating as BJ Penn's career.
Oh man. So you're calling my jokes dark, Bill? Jeez,
I didn't say he was gonna eat anybody.
Bill, why don't you just send him a postcard? And
I'm starting to wonder what's in that soup, Jeff. Anyway, Davison Figueiredo with a guillotine choke over Tim Elliott in the first round. Tim Elliott rocking like the ultra bright mullet for some reason. I don't know why he did that, but Figueiredo holding the guillotine a little bit too long. The referee, Kevin McDonald, tried to break it up and he held it, but then he immediately apologized. I think he was just in the moment. I don't think there was any, malintention there. Marlon Vera getting a performance of the night along with Nico Price for his third round TKO of Andre Ewell. I kind of saw this fight going this way, and I turned around to my buddy and I said, Vera's going to finish him in the third round. I just saw it happening because Ewell just kind of broke somewhere in that second round, and he came out kind of glassy eyed in the third and just looked like he didn't want to be in there anymore. And Marlon Vera just so experienced. This is another case tonight of experiencing, triumphing over, a very motivated up-and-comer. And Ewell is used to getting people out of there in the first round. And when things don't go his way, much in the style of like a Kevin Lee, once things don't go his way, then he kind of checks out a little bit. And that's what kind of happened there. Super talented fighter, though, in Andre Ewell, but experience prevailed there. And then Miguel Baeza getting the TKO basically from the leg kick that dropped Hector Aldana on the prelims. Leg kicks were really adding up for Aldana, and then he finally dropped him with one, and Aldana shelled up. The referee, at that point, the fight should have been over because it was like the third time he was dropped from leg kicks, and he shelled up, and Baeza went in and landed some shots, and he was just punching a guy who was already out of the fight. And the ref should have stepped in a little bit earlier there. And Marvin Vittori, unanimous decision over Andrew Sanchez, and JJ Aldrich, unanimous decision over Lauren Mueller in the curtain jerker last night. I just threw 4 fights at you, Jeff. What sticks out to you most, my friend?
Bill, this Marlon Vera versus Andrew Ewell, that was one of the fights I was really excited for. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch it live, but I am going to go back and watch that one. I think that's a really, really good fight in the bantamweight division. Unfortunately, I didn't get to tune in time. But, Bill, what do you think overall about this card? It seemed to have a little bit of everything. We had finishes, we had some controversy, we had some fights that you and I didn't agree on, which I'm always for. But what do you think overall? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, man, I had an awesome time. It's always fun to get to see the fights live and, hang out with some good people, have some drinks, and, just the energy and the production value at a UFC event is really unparalleled. I go to a bunch of the local circuit shows and things like that, and really nothing compares to it. So if you guys have never been to a live UFC event, you have to do it. I mean, the production value is really something to marvel at. If you think about all the work that goes into it, from the broadcasters to the cameramen to, the timing, the guys in the production booth that you never see or hear from, who pick all the camera angles and cut up the replays. It's really awesome. So it's a spectacle that everybody should witness at least once if you're a fan of the sport. And if you are not a fan of the sport, I don't know why you're listening to this show. So being that you are listening to this show, I'm going to assume you're a fan. And if you haven't seen a live show, you have to do it. I will be at another live show next weekend, Jeff. Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship 8, also in Tampa, Florida. I will be credentialed media at this event, Jeff. Believe it or not, somebody had enough faith in me to give me a press pass and let me go talk to these guys that are going to go punch each other in the face with no gloves on. I went to the last Bare Knuckle FC that was in Tampa, and it's a good time. My teammate, David Mundell, was on the card. He will be on it as well this weekend. So here's another event that I have to go and cover for media purposes, and I have to try to be as unbiased as possible, which is difficult, but, I manage with a lot of professionalism and a lot of whiskey. The headliner of this card, Antonio Bigfoot Silva and Gabriel Gonzaga. Two names you may remember. If you're a longtime fan of the UFC, these are two big, strong heavyweights, and somebody's going to sleep probably in the first minute of this main event. I think it'll be super exciting. We got a lot of fun fights on this card. Follow along on my social media at MMA on the Rocks, Twitter and Instagram, Facebook. I'll be posting all the coverage and everything else. Somebody else who was just signed by BKFC, you may have heard of him, Jeff, the axe murderer Wanderlei Silva. He's not fighting on this card, but he will be making an appearance. He may be having an interview on this show. We'll find out in a week's time. I'm going to be attending probably a press conference sometime this week. I know you guys are used to the once a week podcast, but stay tuned midweek because I'm going to be putting out some more content for the bare knuckle stuff. Any thoughts on all of this, Jeff?
Bill, I'm excited for you, man. It sounds like an awesome opportunity. Hopefully we could get Wanderlei Silva on the show. I enjoy watching his fights. I enjoy, this is going to sound a little sick, but, you've made it this far into the show, so I'm over it. I enjoy watching him hurt people, Bill, because he's so creative about it. He's a blood artist, is what he is.
Yeah, man. Wanderlei, one of the all-time greats. If you want to watch some exciting fights, his fights in Pride with Dan Henderson, with Rampage Jackson, with Mirko Cro Cop. I mean, the list goes on and on. This guy got in there with anybody and everybody. And man, did he know how to put on a show. So I'm looking forward for the opportunity to potentially meet him and maybe ask him a couple of questions this coming Saturday. So Saturday, October 19th, 9 p.m. Eastern is when the main card kicks off, available on pay-per-view, I believe. bareknuckle.tv is the website. So go check that out. I'll be there. If you're going to be there, reach out to me on social media, send me a message, let me know. And, we'll have a drink or something. I don't know if I'm supposed to drink in the press area or not, but that's never stopped.
I'm sure it's fine.
That's never stopped me before, Jeff. It's kind of my stick here. So if they're not going to allow that, they may as well not allow me. Let's get on to real quick. I want to talk about UFC on ESPN number 6 from Boston, Massachusetts, coming up next Saturday as well. October 18th, the TD Garden in Boston, headlined by a New Yorker, Chris Weidman, making his debut at 205 pounds against the undefeated Dominic Reyes. I'm of the opinion that Dominic, maybe got away with a decision in his last fight, but nonetheless, on paper, he is undefeated, and he'll be getting in there with the All-American Chris Weidman. Give me your thoughts, Jeff.
Bill, actually, I think this one's going to be on a Friday night. I don't know.
Yeah, I was wondering. Yeah, I didn't. That's why I almost said the 19th. Yeah, this one is on a Friday, huh? That's weird.
Yeah, it's. I actually wanted to try and go out to Boston and see this one because I've never been to Boston before, but it's not going to work out with work. But Dominic Reyes versus Chris Weidman. I'm excited for this one, Bill. I want Chris Weidman to get a win here because Lord knows he needs it. He's a great fighter, don't get me wrong, and he's been in there with some tough dudes in his last couple of fights. But I'd like to see him get his name back in the win column. I'm a fan of Chris Weidman. Just the fact that he, never backed down from Anderson Silva, in an era where many people were very tentative, very scared to fight Anderson Silva. Chris Weidman said, forget all that. I'm knocking this dude out. And then he went on a Brazilian Legends killing tour where he defended his belt against Vitor Belfort, Lyoto the Dragon Machida. It's easy to forget how good Chris Weidman is based on his last few fights. But, in soccer, Bill, we have this saying where the saying goes, form is temporary, but class is permanent. So, he's in bad form, but he's got the skills to get out of it. And I really want that for him on Friday. But overall, this card looks really good, Bill. What do you think?
Yeah, man. A lot of great points about the All-American Chris Weidman. He doesn't back down. That's why he comes out to "I Won't Back Down" by Tom Petty every time he fights. Very fitting. I think he's very much in the same boat as Joanna. You know, she had a rough skid for a little bit after losing the title, and you know, people started to forget what a killer she was. I think people really forget what a killer Chris Weidman is, and you know, maybe some of the issues he had with getting knocked out late in fights that he was winning, by the way. You know, the fights with Jacare, the fights with Yoel, he was dominating those fights until, you know, some poorly timed strike absorption in the third rounds there. Overall, this fight is great. We're going to get the rematch of Jeremy Stephens and Yair Rodriguez, which ended, unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago in a no contest due to an eye scrape, which we determined was worse than an eye poke. So that's fun. We unfortunately lost the Calvin Kattar versus Magomed Sharipov. That one's been rescheduled for Russia, which, you know, kind of weird circumstances there, because Magomed Sharipov said, yeah, I'm got to pull out of Boston, but I'll be good in Russia like a few weeks later.
That sounds like he's on steroids to me, Bill.
Yeah, or he didn't want to fight Calvin Kattar in his hometown, which I can't blame him for. You know, Calvin Kattar's a monster. We got Macy Barber and Jillian Robertson. That should be a fun one. Joe Lozon making a long-awaited return to the octagon. One of my favorite all-time fighters to watch. You know, over like 40 fights for this guy and never been a boring one. I think he's had 42 fights and he's had like -7 boring fights. I think that's an actual statistic. I've never seen a Joe Lozon fight that I didn't love. Let's see what else we got here. We got some local guys, Kyle Bochniak fighting against the undefeated Sean Woodson. Court McGee on this card against the undefeated Sean Brady. What else you spotting on here, Jeff? We got a lot of undefeated fighters on here.
Yeah, I'm actually really liking this Macy Barber versus Jillian Robertson fight. That should be a really exciting fight.
Mm-hmm.
Women's flyweight, Macy Barber on a little bit of a tear in this division, but so is Jillian Robertson. She's been making a splash ever since her time in the Ultimate Fighter. So this is gonna be really good, Bill. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, man. Yeah. We got some friends in the comments here. We got Tommaso Mark and we got Vladimir Kraft. So Mark came late to the show, but he's happy about Cub winning and he's excited for the Boston card. So Vladimir thinks that Chris will most likely win. Can't disagree with that. And he hopes that Yair will lose because he was very disrespectful after blaming Jeremy for the no contest a couple of weeks ago. Can't disagree with that either, Jeff.
Yeah.
They're pretty spot on in the live chat this week.
Yeah, dude. Jeremy Stephens is a warrior first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that disappointed me, man. And I understand Yair's pissed, but one, it's his fault. And two, you know, Jeremy Stephens, he's the real deal, man. And I think he's going to find that out on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of bad blood going into this one. I don't know how it's going to go. You know, both of these guys had training camps at altitude down in Mexico, you know, which affects your red blood cells and everything like that, and all kinds of biology. But, you know, warriors like Jeremy Stephens don't worry about shit like that. He's just like, tell me when and where, and don't poke me in the eye, and you got yourself a fight.
Yep.
And I think that's fair. I think that's I don't think that's too high of a demand. In any case, anything else you want to get off your chest this week, Jeff?
That's all I got for you, Bill.
All right. Well, for Jeff the Animal Wilson, if you want to follow him on the social media, it's at animal_Wilson on Instagram and Twitter. So please do so. And you guys know how to get a hold of me. It's at MMA on the Rocks, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, MMAonTheRocks.com. You can send me an email, MMAonTheRocks@gmail.com. Follow along. I'll be covering bare knuckle fighting championship Saturday, October 19th from the Florida State Fairgrounds in Tampa, Florida next week. So follow that journey on social media. Stay tuned for some extra content between now and then. We'll have a lot of fun stuff, and then we'll be talking about the Boston card next week as well. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time. Cheers, everybody. Goodbye.